All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Sunday. My name is Zach. Welcome to the Sports Corner at Choose Adventure Media. No Ducks game this week, so I won't be recapping that, but I will be recapping some other stuff that happened yesterday in the college football world. It was kind of a crazy week 6. Not as crazy as last week, but still a lot to talk about. And at the end, I'm going to give a little bit of a preview of the Oregon-Indiana game coming up on Saturday, October 11th. So let's jump right into it. But first, as always, make sure to like and subscribe. Turn on those post notifications so you don't miss when I go live. Um, so first things first, I want to talk about the obvious. Penn State losing to UCLA. That's pretty embarrassing, but it's also kind of what I was talking about last week on the stream of I feel like James Franklin's team just mentally aren't resilient, strong. Like, to be a top tier program, you can't let tough loss to Oregon compound into a loss against a team like UCLA on the road. That's just it's just a sign that James Franklin and Penn State aren't in the top tier of programs like the Georgias, like the Oregons, like the Nick Saban coach teams. It's just completely embarrassing. And I was reading some of the Penn State subreddit posts about it, and a lot of people were saying that Drew Aller was the only person on the team that was caring about the game, which kind of surprises me a little bit because, as you guys know, I'm not too high on Drew Aller. But they were saying Denai Dennis Sutton doesn't care, and that's what I was saying last week at the Oregon game was Denai Dennis Sutton. He's a drama queen. They have a lot of talent, except there's just something about the mental makeup and about the leadership of the team that prevented them from winning. I really don't want to talk about James Franklin being fired because he has a $56 million buyout, and I just don't see that happening this year. I think this could obviously affect his long term, getting a next contract, but he's definitely not going anywhere this year with a $56 million buyout. So, I mean, I think some credit does need to go to Nico Iamaleava. Like, Penn State still does have a lot of talent, or I'm sorry, Nico Iamaleava. And I mean, huge credit. He had a big game: 128 rushing yards, 166 passing yards, two passing touchdowns, and 3 rushing touchdowns. I mean, very impressive. If you guys have seen any of my previous videos, you guys know that I'm not too high on him either. But I think what this shows is that James Franklin isn't the guy for Penn State. Again, he's not going to be fired this year because of a $56 million buyout. And there is a really interesting debate of, would you rather be in all these closely contested games, and would you like to beat everyone that you should and lose to top tier opponents, or would you like to take a big swing, get rid of Franklin, and hire someone else that may be able to beat these top contenders? That's a tough one to answer, obviously. I think you got to swing for the fences. I mean, yeah, it's great to win 9 and 10 games every year, but if you don't win a playoff game, or if you know that there's no possibility of even making it to a championship game, then what's the point, right? I think I'm not saying that if you win 9 games, every head coach should be fired, but I'm just saying over the course of James Franklin's tenure at Penn State, he's kind of reached his plateau, right? Like, he hasn't progressed. He's not going to progress. He's been there for a really long time. What's he been there, 13 years, something like that? James Franklin, Penn State. He got to Penn State in 2014, so 11 years. So this is 12th year coaching at Penn State. And it's kind of been the same story the whole time, right? Like, I mean, they win the games they're supposed to. They get a lot of high-powered recruits. They generate a good amount of NFL talent. But they just aren't able to get past that last 5-10%, excuse me, that really make an elite team. So if I'm a Penn State fan, I'm appreciating all the wins. It's great to not be a 4-win team or a 5-win team, but at the same time, it's a little disappointing knowing that you're never going to be able to push past that last 5-10%. And it's the same thing over and over again. And I think that's what's really disheartening for Penn State fans is that it's not like you're losing in different ways. I was reading the subreddits, and it's the same thing every time of being extremely conservative in these big games in the first 3 quarters, and then the last quarter you start to open things up and you do really well. Sorry, I can't tell if the live stream is working or not. Um, and it's disappointing to see that your team has those flashes of potential, but because your coach doesn't put you in positions to succeed in the first 3 quarters, you're constantly playing catch up against these elite teams that either have the same amount of talent of you or are better. And that's just not a recipe to win. So really disappointing for Penn State. All right. I'm just going to look at the rest of the box scores. I didn't have a chance to watch this game. I mean, third down efficiency against UCLA, Penn State only goes 4 of 9. Like, Andy Kotelnicki, he's a good offensive coordinator, but it's just... And he has good talent. So why are you going 4 of 9 against against UCLA on third down? 357 yards, not bad. Drew Aller, 19 of 26. You know, not bad. Can't knock him too much. Yeah, I don't know how Penn State fumbles this one away when you're averaging over 5 yards a rush. You know, not too bad on penalties, 6 for 43 yards. They only had 1 turnover. That to me just screams that it's the coaches. It's on the coaches. You know, the players are averaging over 5 yards a rush. They're 19 and 26 on passing attempts, 357 yards of offense. You know, that should be capable of winning. But huge shout out to UCLA. Would love to hear from you guys in the chat. What did you guys think about Penn State, the Penn State UCLA game? What did you guys think about the week overall? I'm going to get into the Florida Texas game. At the end of this, I'm going to go into a preview of the Oregon Indiana game. What were the other big games of the weekend? Let's see. Oh, Miami, Florida State was obviously the big one. I think this just shows that Miami is actually back. That's tough to say. Growing up and graduating from the University of Florida, it's tough to say that Miami is back, but they look absolutely legit. They have a couple of defensive ends that are as good as anyone in the country. I think, you know, their defense is very similar to Oregon's. You know, a really dominant front seven, really aggressive. They really rally to the ball quite well. And then their offense, I think, is the biggest difference maker throughout Mario Cristobal's tenure. I think we've seen the defenses be better. Obviously, last year was kind of a reverse of that. But Carson Beck, I think, is legit, and I love to see that he's rehabbed his career. I think he got a lot of unnecessary hate while he was at Georgia that he didn't quite deserve. I think he only lost 3 or 4 games as a starting quarterback, and Georgia kind of more or less ran him out of there. The fans did, not the actual team. So glad to see Carson Beck back. They have some great true freshmen, Malachi Toney. I believe that's his name, right? He's Kadarius Toney's younger cousin. Yeah, Malachi Toney. But Miami absolutely looked legit. The score only shows 28-22, but it was not that close. Looks like Florida State scored 19 in the fourth quarter. So yes, so this absolutely felt like a 28-3 game. I think that kind of sums up the weekend, as there were a bunch of scores that looked a lot worse than they actually were, and there were a lot of scores that looked a lot closer than they actually were, and this is one of them. Florida State looked great. Their opening drive looked phenomenal. I thought it was going to be a shootout. I thought it was going to be really interesting, but then that Miami defense, they were playing really aggressively and really undisciplined on that opening drive, and that caused a lot of big chunk plays for the Florida State Seminoles. But really, after that opening drive, Florida State wasn't able to do much. Tommy Castellano still ends up with 272 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That's what really did them in, was they had a couple of interceptions, they had a couple of fumbles lost, and against a team like Miami, you just can't. So they had 2 interceptions thrown and 1 fumble lost for a total of 3 turnovers. And if you're gonna beat a team like Miami, you can't have 3 turnovers. It doesn't matter how the rest of your team plays, you can't have 3 turnovers against a team with the talent that Miami has. And it seems like they're actually able to put all of the pieces together, which they've kind of struggled with over the last 20 years. But they have some really, really talented defensive players. Wesley Basaint is phenomenal on the edge for them. Ruben Bain, and who's their other guy? Bane. Who's the other guy? And then Mesidor. Those are, I think, for the best edge players or edge duos in the country, I think it's absolutely Oregon with Matayo Uiagalelei and Tatum Tuioti, and then Mesidor and Besainth for the Miami Hurricanes. Just big, physical, disciplined, athletic freaks. Even if they're beat on a play, let's say they made the wrong read on a read option, they're so talented and athletic that they're able to make up for it and recover quite quickly. So a lot of credit needs to go to this Miami team. I think we're starting to see the tiers of college football start to break out. And so I'm going to go to the AP poll that came out this morning. And so I think there's definitely one tier that's Ohio State, Miami, and Oregon. I think they're definitively in a tier above everyone else. And then you have Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Indiana, all the way down, I think, to 10 with Georgia. I think these teams are somewhat proven, but also have proven to have a couple of weaknesses, except for Indiana. I think Indiana is still a little bit unproven. And then after 10, you get into a tier of teams that have some weaknesses: LSU, Tennessee, Georgia Tech, Missouri, and, Michigan. Michigan looked good against Wisconsin at home. Bryce Underwood is developing right in front of our eyes, so I want to give a lot of credit to Bryce Underwood, and Michigan is back to playing Michigan style of football. Really, they're able to be physical and dominant in the trenches. Welcome everyone to chat. I just wanted to say welcome, and if you tell me, sorry, I'm going over week 6 in college football. Let me know what were your favorite parts of week 6, what impressed you the most, what disappointed you the most, and as always, please like and subscribe. But I think finally, through 6 weeks of the college football season, we're starting to see some clear tiers in the sport, right? I think Texas A&M at 5, I think, is probably I think the biggest fraud. So they won 31-9 against Mississippi State, right? But if you watch that game, this did not feel like a 31-9 game. This game felt a lot closer than the Florida State Miami game did. And this is kind of how every Texas A&M game has gone so far this season. They have a phenomenal defense. I think their defense is absolutely legit. They have a lot of athletic freaks. Mike Elko does a phenomenal job with their defense. I think their offense has some weaknesses. Yes, they scored 40 points against Notre Dame, I believe, in their first game. What was the score of that game? So in week 3, they scored 41 points against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's defense is having a down year, so I don't think that's really saying much. They were only able to put 42 up against UT San Antonio in the week 1. They put up 44 against Utah State in week 2. And then 16 against Auburn. Against that Auburn team is very talented as well. But I think Texas A&M is kind of a fraud at number 5. I think they have a lot of weaknesses that can be exploited. I think Marcel Reed, he's a great running option. But I think if they play a complete team or a near complete team, so Texas A&M gets Florida at home this weekend. Just right now, I think I'm going to have to give the nod to Texas A&M just because it's at home. But I think that game's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people may realize or want to give Florida credit for. Florida's starting to put it all together, and they have, a lot of talent. Dallas Wilson, we saw that this weekend against Texas. But I think Florida absolutely has a chance to beat Texas A&M this coming weekend. If it was at the Swamp, I would certainly be picking the Gators. But because it's at home at Kyle Field, I need to see if the Gators can put it together for a second week in a row. The Gators looked incredibly dominant against Texas. They almost had a classic Billy Napier choke it away. There was something at the end of the game where Billy Napier called a timeout seemingly for no reason, and stopped the clock. A player's helmet came off and he said no to the runoff. There was something where basically Texas should have gotten the ball with about 30 seconds left in the game, down a touchdown. and Billy Napier made a mistake or called a timeout or something, and then they got the ball back with a minute left. Now, granted, that Florida Gator defense stepped up big like they did all game, so it ended up not mattering. But overall, the team did take a step forward this weekend against the Texas Longhorns. That's a very talented Texas Longhorns team. Arch Manning really started to come into his own. I don't know who had the opportunity to watch this game. Arch is definitely improving. He made a lot of strides forward that he hadn't made so far this season. He was standing in the pocket and taking some tough shots, making the throws that he needed to, playing with anticipation. Like that, this is closer to the level of the player that we thought he would be coming into the year. Still not exactly what we thought, right? But it definitely much improved. Let's look at the team stats of the Florida-Texas game. So Arch ended up with 263 yards passing. Lagway had almost 300 yards passing with 2 touchdowns and only 1 interception on 21 of 28, so 75% completion percentage against a really talented Texas defense. I don't care what anyone says, this Texas defense is absolutely legit. I think a lot of people love to throw Texas. Honestly, after week 1, they kind of threw them out the window in some of their struggles, but their defense is absolutely legit. It's just been getting their offense put together. I don't think Texas did a good enough job of running the ball, and that's what really did them in. Yeah, they only averaged 2 yards a rush. This Florida Gators defense is really good. It's really deep. They're physical. They're big in the middle, so they're just extremely tough to run the ball on, and Texas really relies on being able to run the ball. I know people think about Steve Sarkisian and his, complex passing plays and ability to get guys open, but really it's all centered around being able to get the run game going. They have some really talented running backs, and they just weren't able to get the run game going against this really talented Florida Gator defense. So huge credit to them. They hold Texas to 341 total yards of offense, which is really good considering all the talent that they have on the offensive side. Jaden Baugh went for over 100 yards rushing and a touchdown. Dallas Wilson, in his very first college game, had 6 receptions, 111 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This guy's absolutely legit. I also just want to talk about Dallas Wilson did officially sign with Oregon as a recruit, and then a few weeks later, he had some family trouble, so he wanted to stay closer to home. So Oregon almost had Dallas Wilson and Decorian Moore, which would have been unbelievable, but he's with Florida and absolutely needed to be with Florida. So he's a big physical receiver. So they have 2 phenomenal true freshmen, and Vernell Brown III and Dallas Wilson. So honestly, those 2 guys themselves could save Billy Napier's job. But the Florida Gators defense just has a lot of talent on it. And I think if Florida can play a similar offensive game that they did against Texas, which I don't know if it's that arguably, but I think Texas is probably a more talented defense than Texas A&M is. But again, being at home, Texas A&M's defense is going to play a little bit better. If Florida can put together a similar offensive game against Texas A&M that they did against Texas, I don't know if this game would even be that close. I think Florida could control the game much like they did against Texas. It's just all going to be about the offensive consistency. But having another weapon in Dallas Wilson really helps out that offense and makes defenses have to play more honest, and they can't just focus in on the run or just focus in on Trey Wilson III or Vernell Brown III. The defenses really are going to have to keep those safeties back for a big explosive threat like Dallas Wilson, which is going to open up that explosive Florida running game with guys like Jaden Baugh and DJ Lagway. So huge win by the Florida Gators. It's nice to see them finally put the pieces all together. It's still extremely early in the season. I don't think I don't think Billy Napier's a dead man walking. I think he can absolutely save his job because, well, there are still some issues in the leadership. And whenever you watch a game, you can just see stuff like clock management or players knowing their responsibilities or personal fouls and just, culture and stuff like that. That stuff is more on coaching than anything else. And whenever you watch a team like Florida and you watch a team like Oregon, you can tell the differences not just in talent, but in teams, in the culture of the team and the leadership of the team. And Florida definitely still isn't in the top tier of leadership, and things aren't still, as consistent as they should be, but it is improving. And I think that can absolutely save Billy Napier's job, as well as I think he still has a $10 million buyout. So I don't know. I don't think Billy Napier will be fired in the middle of the season, even if they go on to lose 3 more games. But very, very impressive win for the Florida Gators over the Texas Longhorns. Let's see what else. So Ole Miss was on a bye week. Oklahoma, impressive 44-0 win over Kent State. Without John Mateer, they'll be without him next week as well, for Red River. Alabama, very impressive win at home over Vanderbilt. This is a very good Vanderbilt team, and I think they proved that. So this is another one of the games that happened this weekend where I think it says a lot about the losing team, not just the winning team. And I think this says a lot about Vanderbilt, that they are legit. Their 5-0 start, I don't think was, fake or superficial, or they didn't play anyone. I think Vanderbilt is absolutely talented. I'm really impressed by Texas Tech. I think they're an absolute contender, and I think the clear-cut favorite so far in the Big 12 for the year. Georgia, big win over Kentucky, 35-14. It's nice to see their offensive consistently clicking. A lot of teams were on byes. Notre Dame went over Boise State. Still don't know what this Notre Dame team is going to be, right? They have 2 losses already, and there's just not a lot left on Notre Dame's schedule. So I don't know what their playoff chances actually are. Obviously, the playoff committee and the powers that be love Notre Dame. So if they win out, I think there's a very solid chance that they get in, but they have some work to do. I think the biggest stories with the AP poll is that they bounced Texas and Penn State all the way out of the top 25. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. This may be a little bit old school of me, but so Texas was number 9, and they lost to a talented Florida team. Granted, this was Florida's only win over an FBS opponent so far this season. But if you watch the game, Florida's talented. They're more talented than a 1-3 team, or now a 2-3 team. So I don't think that's fair to bounce Texas all the way from 9 to 25 when you have a team like Florida State. That definitely was outmatched by Virginia and Miami over these past 2 weeks, or even Iowa State. I don't think Iowa State deserves to be at 22, especially since the committee didn't put Cincinnati in the top 25. Cincinnati is a very talented football team, and I think is probably a top 3 team in the Big 12 this year. And then Penn State, yes, you guys know how I feel about Penn State. They are not mentally resilient at all. They have a lot of talent, and they're just not able to put it all together, and they have a lot of difficult personalities on that team, but they do have a lot of talent, and they lost to Oregon, yes, but that was a closely contested game, and clearly the AP poll still felt strongly enough about Penn State to leave them in the top 10, and then they lose a bad one on the road to UCLA. But I don't know if that's enough to bounce them out of the top 25. I don't think Iowa State deserves to be in the top 25. I don't think Florida State deserves to be in the top 25. And I don't know if Arizona State's done enough to be in the top 25. So I disagree, as always, with the AP poll. You guys know my feelings on the AP poll. Now this upcoming week, we have a lot of really good games coming up this week as well. Let's go college football. I know Red River is this weekend. That's a Red River rivalry between Texas and Oklahoma. It's a little bit of a disappointing game, obviously, because John Mateer will not be playing. He's Oklahoma's Heisman contender quarterback. He broke his hands a couple of weeks ago. Schedule week 7. Okay, hard to believe we're already 7 weeks into the college football season. All right, let's see. Friday night, Rutgers traveling to Washington. I think that'll be an interesting game. I'll probably tune in for that one. I think this Washington team is good. They're just young, and I think that's kind of been their struggles this year. But really impressive win on the road. They had this weekend at Maryland. I don't know if you guys were able to catch that game. Oh, how's it going, Z? How do you spell your name? Zach. Zach. I'm the Buckeyes fan. We talked last week. I'm Jared, though my handle is NA, not available. Nice to see you again, Jared. My name's Zach, Z-A-C-H. Thank you for asking. It's good to see you. What do you think about Ohio State's win over Minnesota? They seemed like they started out a little bit sluggish, and then they opened things up to win 42-7, something like that. I didn't watch the game. What was the overall vibe of the game? Would love to hear from you on that one. I'll pull up the stats for you. Let's see. All right, they won 42-3. Cool. Yes, turned staying loose. Kind of figured it was something like that. 23. He went 23 of 27 and 3 touchdowns. That's really That's really impressive. Oh, Carnell Tate. Oh, 9 receptions, 183 yards. Wow, that's really impressive. He's really good. I think a lot of people unfairly wrote him off last year, but he's so young. He has a lot of talent. Obviously Jeremiah Smith is in a league of his own, but I don't think Carnell Tate is overall that far behind him. I don't think it's a Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave situation where they're on the same tier, but I don't know if there's anyone on the same tier as Jeremiah Smith, right? But Carnell Tate's very, very talented, and so this doesn't surprise me. 183 yards on 9 receptions and a touchdown. And then Minnesota's defense is really good. So I think this unfairly paints a picture of Minnesota. But obviously Ohio State so far has been exactly. Carnell Tate wouldn't be wide receiver 1 on any other team. I really feel that way. I mean, who else has talented wide receiver? He would be the number 1 wide receiver at Oregon, as much as I hate to say that. He would be the number 1 wide receiver at Florida, Texas. Derek Wingo I don't think has impressed as much as he should have. He would be the number 1 wide receiver at Ole Miss, obviously at Texas A&M. This is a really interesting topic, but Carnell Tate I think would be wide receiver 1. I think really on any other team. Bo Jackson, 13 carries for 63 yards. Obviously this Buckeye defense continues to show that they're one of the best in the country. And I don't know if that's on Matt Patricia. I know I've talked about my feelings about Matt Patricia on this channel before, but I think they just have a lot of talent. Even though they lost a lot of talent, I think they are still extremely talented. They held Minnesota to 68 rushing yards and 94 passing yards. That's just ridiculous to hold any Power 4 team to that. Jackson started for the first time. Nice, you called it. Good job, Jared. You called that one on the stream last week, that he should be the running back 1. I'm just looking over the stats some more. Yeah, I mean, impressive win for Ohio State. Who do you guys have coming up in week 7? At Illinois. That'll be a good game. That's the Big Noon, Fox Big Noon kickoff. What do they call it? Caden Curry was quiet. Let's see. Yeah, let's look at the box score. Sonny Styles went off. I love how much Fox loves to hype up the Big Noon kickoff, and everyone hates it. Not a single person enjoys it. Like it's almost like a cap of shame to be on the Fox Big Noon kickoff, and no one likes it. It's just really hard because, and especially since most of the Big Ten isn't even on the Eastern time zone, so it's at least an 11 a.m. kickoff for most of the Big Ten, and then you have the West Coast teams like Oregon that's a 9 a.m. kickoff. So it's just really hard to get excited for it. Students don't get excited for it, so the environment's not as exciting. It's the game of shame essentially. I don't know why it's a noon kickoff. It's one of the better games this upcoming weekend. There's a lot of good games. I'm okay with it. The team up north at noon because historically it has been. I agree. I think that's part of the ambiance of it. But it's just like the Florida Georgia game. The Florida Georgia game will always be at 3:30. That's part of the ambiance of it. I would never want it to be a primetime game. But yeah, the other than that, the Fox Big Noon kickoff game is a game of shame for those that don't know. um, all right. Let's look at the other. So there's a lot of really good games coming up this weekend. Ohio State at Illinois, Texas and PSU unranked. Yeah, so I was just talking about that. I disagree. I get the teams have been disappointing so far this year, but especially Texas. I don't think Texas has done enough to lose the fact that they're ranked. I think they've done more to earn their ranking than Florida State has. Because Florida State the last 2 weeks has just proven that they have not been as talented as Virginia and Miami, which granted those are two very good football teams. But still, I don't think Texas should be unranked, and I get it. Penn State laid an egg this weekend at UCLA, but they lost a really close game to a really talented Oregon team, so that's effectively a tie in my eyes. Agreed, shouldn't be unranked. Hurts OSU's resume too. Exactly, and it hurts Oregon's resume a lot because now Oregon does. If Penn State continues to be unranked, or you know if the AP poll doesn't respect them as much, that's really going to hurt Oregon's playoff resume. Because they have Indiana coming up this week, which I like I just said a few minutes ago, Indiana's a little unproven. So yes, they're ranked in the top 10. But they may kind of have a similar tanking as Penn State. And then other than that, Oregon really only has USC and Washington. Michigan versus Southern Cal, who wins? That's a tough one. I think a lot of people are overreacting to USC's loss to Illinois last week, so I'm going to go Southern Cal. I think Michigan is improving, and I think Michigan's a good football team, and I like that Michigan's getting back to playing their style of football. But I think that Southern Cal offense is really explosive, and they have just enough on defense. I think I'm going to pick Southern Cal. How about you? My gut says Southern Cal wins. Unbiased, haha. Yeah, definitely unbiased. Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think Southern Cal is a more talented team than a lot of people want to give them credit for, and I don't think enough of the country has watched them enough. Again, that Illinois game, I don't know if USC lost it. I think Illinois won that game, if you know what I mean. So Ohio State at Illinois, I think that's going to be a good game. I think Ohio State still ultimately pulls it out. But I think Illinois is a good football team. Underwood struggled at Oklahoma. I think he did. But I mean, I think Oklahoma's defense is definitely better than Illinois's. Oklahoma has a really good defense, and Brett Venables is one of the better defensive coaches in the country. And they finally are starting to accumulate more talent on that side of the ball. And Underwood is growing every week. I think this past week he had 270 yards passing against Wisconsin, I want to say. Bryce Underwood. Yeah, against Wisconsin, he had 270 yards passing and a touchdown. And in Wisconsin, I get it. They've been down the last couple of years, but they're still a very talented football team, well coached. So 270 yards passing against them is absolutely legit. But yeah, he is young, so I think it would be easy to, yeah. Wide receiver on Michigan, I think number 0. Oh yeah, Michigan has no wide receivers, and that's not getting talked about enough. They have no talent on the outside. The broadcasters always sugarcoat it a lot. They have absolutely no talent on the outside. They have major problems with drops. And even with all those problems with drops, he still had 68% completion percentage this past weekend. So that's another kind of, let's say it's an asterisk on Bryce Underwood's stats, is they should be a lot more impressive if he even had average wide receivers. Like, they have nothing on the outside. Kendrick Bell, Jamar Browder. So the number 0. Oh, Samaj Morgan. Yeah, that's what you're talking about. Yeah, but the RB breaks long ones. Yeah. So they brought over, what's his name? He's the Alabama transfer. I always get him and Jam Miller. Justice Haynes. He's a really impressive running back, and he's just perfect for that system. And Michigan's always going to have a good run game, especially when you have Sharon Moore as your coach. So that really helps. I think Bryce Underwood's a very talented quarterback, and he's getting better every week. He's just young. But it takes a lot of talent to throw 270 yards against a power 4 opponent, especially when you have no wide receivers. Their wide receiver room is really bad, and they really need to get an influx of talent in there. Alabama at Missouri will be a really talented game. I'm sorry, a really interesting game. Missouri, I don't think enough people have watched this year, but they are absolutely legit. They are a legit number 14 team in the country, and I think they're going to give Alabama some trouble, especially at a noon game. I think Missouri has potential to win that game. I think, you know, if I had to put money on it right now, I'm going to put my money on Alabama. I think Alabama is getting better every week, and I think the way that they're winning is very consistent, and they've proved that they can replicate it. So I'm going to go with Alabama, but that's going to be a good game. Let's see. I already talked about the Ohio State game. Franklin going to be coaching there at Penn State next year. Will Knowles replace eventually? So I'm going to say yes, he will be there next year because he has a $56 million buyout. But will Knowles replace eventually? I would love that. I think Jim Knowles has certainly earned a very prestigious head coaching job if he wants it. I'm going to be honest, I don't know if he wants it. He is on the older side, so I don't know if that means he just doesn't, he's beyond that desire to be a head coach, and he just wants to be a coordinator. But I would love Jim Knowles to replace him at Penn State. I was talking about this earlier. Penn State, or James Franklin, will be coaching there next year. I have no doubts about it. I don't know if he should get another contract, and I don't know if he should have his contract extended. I think Penn State fans, and I was reading in the subreddit over the weekend, they are very much resigned to the fact that they're going to beat who they should. You know, they're going to be a 9-10 win team every year, but they're never going to be able to get over that hump. And I know that sounds dramatic, and I know never say never, and I know that teams can constantly evolve and change and get better, but it's in the NIL era. I don't know if you can put together a team that has as much talent, that has more talent than Penn State currently has. And the way that he's losing these games has been the same for the last 11 years. And at some point, you have to realize that he's not going to change, and he just doesn't have what it takes to get that last 5-10% to move up into the tiers of the Georgias, of the Alabamas under Nick Saban, of the, honestly, Dan Lannings, of the Brian Days at Ohio State. He will always be in tier number 2. So I think it is very much worth the risk, and I get it. It's not my team. It's easy to say this, but I think it's worth taking the risk of swinging for the fences, trying to get a coach that can get you past that last 5%, that last 10%, versus having 10-win seasons that don't really mean a whole lot. Fickell going to replace Larry Johnson at OSU in a few years as D-line coach. I know timing is everything. I would like that. I like Luke Fickell. I don't really know what's happening at Wisconsin, because that is a good place. That, like, it is possible to win at Wisconsin. And I know Luke Fickell is very much a child of the Buckeyes, so I would love to see him back on the Buckeyes. I don't know if Luke Fickell makes it past this season, so I don't know the status of Larry Johnson, if you think he'll get a promotion or anything, or a head coaching job somewhere, but I think Luke Fickell is probably gone after this year. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if over the next coming weeks if he gets fired. And I love the storylines of guys going back and coaching at their alma mater. Fickle is a 3-time heavyweight champion high school wrestler. Yeah, he's a beast. I think he's a great coach. To do what he did at Cincinnati, I think is really impressive and shows that he has the chops to be a head coach. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what it is. I don't know what the problem is at Wisconsin. He just hasn't been able to get the offense going. So I would love to see Luke Fickle go back to Ohio State, get rehabbed a little bit, and then be a head coach somewhere else. But I like most college football fans, I think I love the alma mater story, right? Like I mean, if oh man, who's the Notre Dame head coach? Who was a former Ohio State Buckeye. Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman. Like, if Ryan Day, I don't know, retires young, like I would love to see Freeman at Ohio State. Like I love storylines like that. I'm so happy Kirby Smart is at Georgia and is able to win has won championships at his alma mater. I just think that's a really cool story. You know, Mario Cristobal's a Miami guy, and now he's, you know, bringing success to Miami. I think that's part of what makes college football so great, and that loyalty and that. You know, you'll always be my first love kind of thing is what makes the sport so great compared to the NFL. And the love that, you know, the former Miami players are still showing to the current Miami program, you know, and they're getting really excited on the sidelines. That's part of what makes the sport so great. So I love storylines like that. So I would love Luke Fickle to get back to Ohio State and be part of their success. I think Marcus Freeman's also a phenomenal coach. I think he's extremely underrated, even though he does get a lot of attention and he does get a lot of accolades and a lot of respect, but I still think he's incredibly underrated. Love him as a head coach. Yeah, I think he's one of the top coaches in the country already. Pitt at Florida State. Pitt's kind of in a downward spiral. He talks bad about OSU. Really? I didn't know that. So Jared said he talks bad about Ohio State, talking about Marcus Freeman. So actually most Buckeyes don't like Freeman. He badmouthed education at OSU, said they offer online classes and so on, badmouthed the school that gave him a degree. Yikes, I didn't realize that. Oh, wow. I hate when people say stuff like that because I'm going to be honest, most programs are doing that, right? Like, he is best friends with Laurinaitis. But Laurinaitis, he's like, he loves Ohio State, right? Like he's kind of like AJ Hawk, like they're big Ohio State guys still. That's what I thought. But stuff like that where, you know, they're saying athletes get special treatment, or they're getting, you know, online classes, or they get assistance in their classes or whatever. Okay, newsflash, every program is doing that, right? Like, some programs get caught, some teams get called out for it, but every school is doing it. Newsflash. 06 to 08 Laurinaitis, and then when was Freeman? Yeah, Laurinaitis was great for the Buckeyes. Laurinaitis. Not laryngitis, that's not what I want. Oh, okay. Let's see. Yeah, so Laurinaitis was, as a player, 05 to 08. So he was unfortunately on those teams that lost back-to-back championships to Florida and LSU in 06 and 07, if I remember correctly. Marcus Freeman was with Ohio State 04 to 08. So yeah, so they were there at the exact same time, linebackers. I was really young, but obviously I remember 2006 extremely well because that's the year the Florida Gators won a championship over the Ohio State Buckeyes, 41 to 14. sorry to remind you of that, Jared. James Laurinaitis. What is he doing? Okay, so he's the linebackers coach at Ohio State. Do you think James Laurinaitis ever jumped ship to Marcus Freeman in Notre Dame? Laurinaitis broke out game was 06 versus Texas. Number 1, number 2 had a pick. Yeah, and he went on to have a great career. I love him just because he's a classic linebacker, right? That's exactly what you want. He looks the part. He played the part. Love that old school style linebacker, and that's why I love Bryce Betcher so much on the Oregon Ducks. Is I feel like he is very much in that same mold of the James Laurinaitis, and just big physical, classic linebacker. All right, and then before I go any further, I think it's time to preview the Oregon-Indiana game. He actually coached with Freeman in 23, I think. Oh, interesting. I have his Wikipedia pulled up. I don't know why I didn't look at that. He did in 2022. 2022, yeah, Kelly had gone to LSU at that point. So yeah, so he coached. So Laurinaitis was a coach at Notre Dame in 22. Ohio State in 23, and then got promoted to linebacker coach last year. That's awesome. I know I just got done saying it, but I love seeing guys go back to their alma mater. All right, so now I'm going to change my title to the Oregon-Indiana preview. Let's see, Oregon versus Indiana preview. And okay. All right. So this is a big one. College Game Day is officially going to be in Eugene this weekend. It's going to be a great environment. It's the weather in Oregon's just classic, great football weather. It's going to be in the 50s and 60s and raining, except it never rains at Autzen Stadium. So it'll be dry there, obviously. So Oregon dropped to number 3 in the AP poll. Understandably so. Miami had a great win over Florida State, and especially with Penn State dropping out of the AP poll, makes sense that Oregon drops to number 3. Indiana moves up to number 7. Both teams are coming off of a bye week. For those of you that may not know, Fernando Mendoza is the quarterback for Indiana. He's extremely talented. I think he is probably I'm going to put him at the number 2 quarterback in the country right now, behind Dante Moore. So if you look at a lot of articles, those guys are probably in the top 10, but not much higher. But I think they are very solidly the top 2 quarterbacks in the country right now. They have very similar stats. Dante Moore has 1,210 yards. Fernando Mendoza has 1,208 yards. And they just have very similar styles, very strong arms. They make a lot of, they always make the right read. They have just enough of a wiggle, but they're not necessarily dual threat guys, but they have enough of a running ability that you have to account for them in the run game. And I think Fernando Mendoza is a great NFL draft prospect. I've been very high on Fernando Mendoza since the offseason. I made a short on him, I think in like May or June. So this is going to be a big game. I don't know if... So right now, ESPN's giving Oregon a 70% chance to win. I think it'll be closer than that. And so Vegas is giving Oregon 7.5 points as the favorites over Indiana. Oh man, I think Indiana's a good team. I'm gonna look at their team stats. Because I mean, I'm very familiar with Fernando Mendoza, and I know that their defense has improved, even from last year. So obviously they had the big 63-10 win over Illinois, which is really hard to do considering we saw what Illinois did the following week to USC. So this offense is legit, and I think this defense is legit too. They haven't given up more than 15 points all season. Granted, their first 3 games were against not the best talent. But let's look at their team defense. NCAA stats. And team stats, we'll look at team defense or overall defense. Okay, so Indiana's number 5 in total defense, only allowing 220 yards a game. It's crazy that Ohio State is number 3 in total defense, considering they've actually played some really decent opponents. I think it just really speaks. I don't think Ohio State's defense getting enough credit. I think a lot of people think it's just kind of a fluke, or I don't know, voodoo. I know this is about Oregon and Indiana, but I have to mention the last time Indiana beat OSU was 1988. Oh man, I love college football. Yeah. I agree. Indiana is literally historically one of the worst college football programs of all time. But Kurt Cignetti has really turned them around. I think Kurt Cignetti is absolutely a great head coach. He loves Indiana. His players love him. I mean, last year they were able to run the ball, and I think this is an improved team over last year's Indiana team, and I don't know if enough people are giving them credit. I don't know if people just don't watch them. I don't know what it is. Elijah Surratt, I think, is a legit wide receiver, and they have a guy that has even more yards than him, and Omar Cooper Jr. Obviously, I think giving my pick now, I think I do have to go with Oregon, right? Just because I think Oregon's defense is one of the best in the country, if not the best, arguably, with Ohio State, even if the stats may not reflect it. And Autzon's an extremely tough place to play, right? Ohio State found that out last year. They wanted to say it wouldn't be that loud, and I loved the meme with Ohio State fans with his fingers in his ears. So overall, I'm going to have to pick the Oregon Ducks over Indiana, and I think Oregon gets a big top 10 win. I think Oregon just continues to do what they've been doing all season. They're able to run the ball effectively. There's a video of Will Howard on sidelines making fun of Cignetti by simulating putting out a cig and stomping it with his foot. Yeah. Yeah, but Kurt Cignetti does have one of the best, I'm going to say, counter memes in the whole Google Me thing. I think that's one of the best taglines of all time. For those of you that may not know the context, when Indiana started to have success last year, he basically told reporters to Google him if you aren't familiar with his game. So I think Autzon's an extremely tough place to play, and while I think Indiana is an improved team, I think Oregon is even more of an improved team over last year. So I'm going to go with the Oregon Ducks. I don't know if Oregon covers. No, I think they will. I think this will be a higher scoring game. If it's something like a 35-24, I wouldn't be surprised. I think Oregon, and they're going to be able to establish the run early, and I think they're going to be able to hit those explosive plays that they weren't able to hit as much against Penn State, especially early on. So final score prediction for Oregon Indiana is going to be 35-24. Oregon will win by 20. I like the confidence. I like the confidence. It'll be big if Oregon can win by 20. That'll be huge because, like I said, Oregon, after this Indiana game, they don't have a ton. Yeah, Autzon's one of the best home field environments in the country. But after this, they don't have a lot of other challenges left on their schedule. So they have Indiana at home this week, and then they go on the road to Rutgers. Okay, could maybe see them struggling a little bit because it's on the East Coast, blah, 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 all that talk. Then they get Wisconsin at home. We just saw Wisconsin not do well against Michigan. Then they go on the road to Iowa. I think, again, that's a tougher place to play. It may be like the Wisconsin game last year where they struggle a little bit, but ultimately they pull it out. And then they get Minnesota at home, USC at home. If that game was on the road, I would feel a lot worse about it, but because it's at home, I think Oregon takes care of USC. And then there's the rivalry game at the end of the year at Washington. Badgers number 1 in rush defense. Is that real? Oh, yeah, it is. I do remember hearing that. So that'd be a little bit of a challenge, but I mean, this Ducks offense is so explosive. It's if you shut down their run game, okay, then they have DeCorian Moore and Gary Bryant Jr. and Malik Benson for these big threats downfield, and then you can also get Kenyon Sadiq and Jamari Johnson on these quick screens out, and Will Stein just does such a good job of setting up these quick swing screens to the outside, which are basically extensions of the run game. So they're not the Michigan traditional, I formation inside zone or halfback dive. Will Stein is so creative in getting the ball into the playmaker's hands and having effectively run plays, but not the traditional undefeated regular season for the Ducks I see coming. I think if they beat Indiana, I think it will be an undefeated season for the Ducks into the Big Ten title game. I agree, and I think even the Ducks, if they lose a game, say at Washington at the end of the year, I think the Ducks still make the Big Ten championship game, especially since Penn State just lost their second game. What are the Big Ten standings right now? Like, obviously Ohio State's undefeated. I would love to see that. I really just want to see that as a college football fan. As of right now, I don't know if I can pick the Ducks to win that game. I'm going to be honest, but it would be a very, very good game. And I'm going to knock on wood on this one. After if Oregon wins this weekend, I kind of want to start looking at Big Ten championship game tickets because I think that'd be a really fun game to go to. But don't want to get ahead of myself. So right now, the Big Ten standings. There's only 4 undefeated teams: Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, and Michigan. I don't know. I don't think Michigan finishes the season undefeated in Big Ten play. They have USC on the road. Is it that this weekend too? Dang, that's a good game. And then they get Washington at home. That's going to be a tough game. Michigan State's always a tough rivalry game for the Wolverines. And then, of course, they have the game at the end of the season. So I think Michigan could end up with 2 losses, which would make things interesting. But I don't see Michigan going undefeated in Big Ten play. Michigan may have to lose twice for OSU to play in the Big Ten title game. Honestly, not confident about OSU. I agree. And we talked about this last week, is the kind of psychology of the game for Ohio State. And it's at the Big House this year, right? Come on. It is. It's at the team up north this year. Which that's not an easy place to play, especially for a team that those Michigan fans love as much as the Ohio State Buckeyes. So who do you think Ohio State loses to, though? So you're saying they lose the game, but they win the rest of theirs? So Ohio State would have to beat Illinois this weekend on the road. That's why away and young swaggy quarterback. I agree, and I think Julian's saying I don't know, and maybe you know this better than I do, but I don't know how tested he's been yet. Like, I know Texas A&M or Texas is a very talented defense, but I don't know, like, how confident are you if they get down 10-0 on the road at Illinois this week that he can lead them in a comeback? He's really young. I think he's really talented, and like you said, he has a lot of confidence, he has a lot of swagger, but like, if they get down 14-0 to Penn State at home on November, well, granted that's at home, so I could see them doing that, but if they get down 14-0 to Michigan, can he lead them back, right? And I get it's a team sport and there's a lot of talent. The team up north is the only possible loss to me. Confident in saying comeback. Interesting. Okay, I like it. I think anytime you have that defense, you have a chance to come back, right? Like, if there's any defense that I need to put money on to get a stop in the fourth quarter, especially in the red zone, I'm gonna put it on the Buckeyes. They've proven that now for the last 20 games that they've played, that they are one of the best red zone defenses in the country, if not the best. So that really helps if a young quarterback does get down 10-12 points. But yeah, and then what are the other Big Ten standings? So That's Michigan. Okay, so there's 4 undefeated teams, and then there's a bunch of teams with 1 loss. But obviously, a lot of so if Ohio State wins out, then Illinois would end up with 2 losses. Oregon would beat USC, and that'd be 2 losses. So even the Kenyatta got, ooh, maybe out Saturday. That would be tough. Although Ohio State obviously does have a lot of depth. Ohio State depth charts. I forget. Is he probably y'all's best edge defender right now, Kenyatta Jackson? Well, Caden Curry I know has been playing really well this year, but you said he was kind of quiet on Saturday. And then you said Bo Atkinson's been a little bit disappointing this year. Opposite Curry, yes, loaded at D end. CJ Hicks, I've heard his name a lot. Are you guys playing a lot of young guys like Zion Grady? They announced today Hicks redshirting. Interesting. Weird. I mean, that would be big. I still don't know if Illinois has enough on the offensive side of the ball to overcome that Ohio State defense. But that does make things more interesting. And Kenyatta Jackson, he's a really fun player to watch. So I'm a little bummed that he's out. But yeah, I think if Oregon can win Saturday against Indiana, I think they have a very good shot to make the Big Ten championship. I need to check out Illinois. Honestly, it was a good. I don't know if it's been posted anywhere, but if you can try to find the Illinois USC game from last weekend, that was a really good game that came down to the wire. Makai Lemon and Jaden Mayava they're a really fun duo to watch for USC and for USC. Only going based off the Indiana score, 60 or something. Yeah, that was a tough game, but they bounced back really well, and it's just the opposite of what Penn State did this weekend, right? Like Penn State, they were in the game last week. Like I don't think you should feel bad about that loss. Like I mean, Drew Aller choked in the fourth, but again, that's par for the course with Penn State right now. But then they laid an egg against UCLA, and you can't do that. As a head coach, you got to find whatever it takes to get your team motivated on the road at UCLA to not lay an egg. And I think a lot of credit needs to go to Brett Bielema for getting his team ready after a tough loss to Indiana. 63-10. Like, it doesn't matter what level of football you're at. Giving up 63 points sucks, right? And I can't imagine the conversations that they had in the week between losing 63-10 and then getting USC at home, this high-flying, powerful offense, and Brett Bielema was able to get his team ready. What happened with Penn State run game? I mean, they averaged 5 yards a rush against UCLA. That's my biggest question mark. And I didn't have a chance to watch the game, so I was reading on the Penn State subreddit last night. And everyone was saying that it was classic Andy Kotelnicki being too conservative in the first 3 quarters with play calling, like they did against Oregon. And then they were saying a lot of the other veterans, like Dennis Sutton, and I'm assuming Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, just didn't care. They were showing a lack of care. And that's what a lot of the Penn State fans were mad about. I mean, Drew Aller was their leading rusher, which isn't awesome, with 78 yards. But Katron Allen averaged 6 yards a carry on 8 rushes. Nicholas Singleton laid an egg with 11 carries with only 39 yards. They need a tight end. So they have 2 talented-ish tight ends. But I think they just got bailed out a lot last year by... who was the guy on the Colts? Oh, man, what's his name? His name's on the tip of my tongue. Penn State. Ferguson? Nope, not Ferguson. Tyler Warren. I think they just got bailed out a lot last year by Tyler Warren, and that kind of really opened up a lot of opportunities for their running backs, and it really made a lot of their wide receivers look a lot better than they are. I think they have some decent talent in their wide receiver position. I think they just don't do enough to get the ball into their hands. Like we saw at the end of the Oregon game, how devastating the threat of a jet sweep was against this really talented and disciplined Oregon defense. So it's like, why don't you get the ball into their hands earlier on? Like I absolutely believe that it's just on Kotelnicki being too conservative in the first 3 quarters, and maybe that's like per the advice of James Franklin, is that he doesn't want to lose the game in the first 3 quarters. Penn State quarterback Drew is from Ohio. Yeah, he is. I know we talked about this last week, but I've never been a fan of Drew Aller because I think he has the physical tools, but there's something in his mental make. Dodged a bullet there. Man, I love college football. Drew Aller. Where is he from? What part of Ohio? He went to Medina. Medina High School. Where is that? Okay, so northeast. Okay, so that's more. That's more Penn State territory of Ohio. It looks not that far from Cleveland, like Akron land. But anyway, yeah, I think it's just another Andy Kotelnicki being too conservative in the first 3 quarters, which I bet is the advice of James Franklin. And instead of playing to win the game, they play to not lose the game, and that ultimately what ends up losing them the game, ironically. They have some talented tight ends. They have Luke Reynolds and they have Khalil Dinkins, which are great receiving threats. They're just not doing enough to get the ball into these guys' hands. I mean, as an Ohio State fan, it kind of feels like last year at the beginning of the year when they weren't getting the ball into the hands of Jeremiah Smith enough. Kajana Carter was from Westerville. I'm 42. Do you know? I don't. The name sounds familiar. Yeah, so that was a little before my time. I'm 24. So really, like I was really young, but I grew up just south of Gainesville. So I remember the 2006 national championship season by the Florida Gators. And then that was really my introduction into college football. And then the following year, Tim Tebow won the Heisman, and then the following year, the Florida Gators won the championship again. And then the Florida Gators entered purgatory. But so 2006 is like the championship game is really the first college football game I really remember. Like I don't remember the whole drama with Ohio State and Michigan playing in the game at the end of the year, and then playing what they played in the Big Ten championship, right? Kerry Collins was really 1994 Penn State team. Penn State statistics. Yeah, Kerry Collins, 67% completion percentages, 2,600 yards, 21 touchdowns. Finished 4th in the Heisman. Wow, that's impressive. I started watching in 1988. Yeah, that's a few years. I like to refer to that as BZ, before Zach. And so I don't know where Penn State goes from here. They have a lot of talent, especially on that defensive side of the ball, so they should be playing a lot better than they are. I don't know how you give up 42 points to a struggling UCLA team. Granted, UCLA, they have literally nothing to lose. They already lost their coach. A lot of recruits are already decommitting. Like, they have nothing to lose, and that's always dangerous to play. Probably watched Ohio State beat Indiana. Oh. That's oh man. So I don't know where Penn State goes from here. But I'm gonna go the AP poll and just see if there's anything else. Or actually, there's more games in this upcoming week I want to talk about. I was gonna say, okay, I thought that's what you meant. Okay. Schedule. Okay. So a lot of really good games this weekend. Iowa State at Colorado, I think, will be interesting. Florida at Texas A&M. I think Florida has a decent chance to upset Texas A&M. I think South Carolina at LSU is a dangerous game. I'm not impressed with LSU. I just rewatched the Ole Miss LSU game from last weekend. And then LSU has a bye week this week. Garrett Nussmeier was playing hurt. Make no qualms about it. I think they were saying that he had recovered from a core injury. Yeah, no, he was absolutely still injured in that game. He was underthrowing balls. I think LSU's defense is absolutely legit. I think their offense is not clicking for whatever reason. Not a fan of Brian Kelly. I think his outburst again at a reporter a few weeks ago was absolutely uncalled for. I don't know if you guys missed it, but so I think it was last month 1988. Barry Sanders won the Heisman. Yeah, he did. Barry Sanders won the Heisman in '88. Really, Mike Gundy was his quarterback. That's interesting. But yeah, Barry Sanders was the Heisman winner in 1988. He still holds the rushing yards record from that year at 2,628 yards. And we saw last year, what's his name? Ashton Genty tried to break it, and that's the closest we've gotten in a while. How many rushing touchdowns did Barry Sanders have that year? In 1988, Barry Sanders had 2,628 rushing yards and 37 touchdowns. Wow. That's really impressive. One of the best to ever do it. Really fun to watch. I wish I would have been able to watch him in college and pros, but I was not. But yeah, great year for college football. Who won the championship that year? 1988 college football championship. Notre Dame. I think that's the NCAA record for rushing TDs season. Yeah, Barry Sanders at 37. Let's see. So most rush yards in a season is Barry Sanders at 2,628. Most for a career is Donnell Pumphrey from San Diego State a few years ago at 6,400. He has the most rushing touchdowns in a season at 37. Yeah, I think that's all the really significant career rushing records. And then who's the best college running back of all time? Tough. That's a good one. Let's think. So Barry Sanders is obviously up there, right? I think you have to throw in Herschel Walker into the consideration. I think I still probably give the edge to Barry Sanders. Best college RB of all time. I think Barry Sanders was just so tough because he was fast, powerful. I think he was more versatile than a lot of the other typical guys that they throw into that. So a quick Google search says Barry Sanders, Herschel Walker, Bo Jackson, Earl Campbell, and Tony Dorsett. I think I probably have to give the edge to Barry. I know that's has to be Archie Griffin. Yeah, the only two-time Heisman winner. That is true. That's like Archie Griffin. Oh, and he went to Ohio State, right? Yeah. Record 31 straight games with 100 yards. That's impressive. Played from 72 to 75. College stats. I mean, 3 straight seasons with over 1,400 yards rushing. In college, that's really impressive. 26 total touchdowns. I mean, he was a first team All-American 1 year, 2-time Heisman winner. Yeah, I think you would either have to give the edge to Barry Sanders or Archie Griffin because, like you said, 2-time Heisman winner, only person ever do it. Um, Talent wise, I agree. Archie not one, but not as not enough people know that Archie Griffin's a 2-time Heisman winner. I think for being the only person to ever win 2 Heisman trophies, for some reason people don't talk about him enough. I don't know if it's because it was 50 years ago. Yeah, 50 years ago. I don't know what it is, but yeah, he definitely doesn't get enough credit. Oh, really? What's he like? Is he? I know sometimes meeting athletes in person is not everything it's hyped up to be. I, yeah, I've had some not so good experience meeting athletes in person, but I've also had great experiences. Like I met Percy Harvin and I met Tim Tebow. They're just as phenomenal as you think they are. Friendly as can be. That's awesome. I totally respect that these guys, you know, they have families and they have, you know, their people too. But I'm just gonna say Tim Tebow and Percy Harvin are phenomenal to meet in person if you ever get the chance to meet them in person. So let's get back to the upcoming games this week. So week 7 of the college football season. I think Red River will be interesting. I really wish we could have gotten this game with John Mateer healthy. I think that would have made this game an absolute shootout. But I think there's a decent chance Oklahoma loses, and that's why I don't like Texas being unranked here. Oklahoma's ranked number 6, and I think they're very talented. I think they've earned it. I saw Lynn Swan at Kroger in Columbus in 2013. Had a practice jersey on. Strange. Yeah, I think so. I obviously lived in Gainesville for a while, and so Anthony Richardson, I would take his order at Chick-fil-A all the time. And Andrew Nemhard as well. He came into Chick-fil-A a lot. Will Yeget would come in. Martez Ivy, a former Florida Gator offensive tackle, would come into Chick-fil-A a lot. It was right there on University Avenue, so at the corner of 13th and University. So I saw a lot of the athletes come in. That was really cool. We would do a lot of catering orders for the football team after the games and stuff, visiting and home teams. So. Anthony Richardson was really nice. Andrew Nemhard was really nice. So I'm really glad to see Andrew Nemhard doing well in the NBA, even though he transferred to Gonzaga. But very nice guy. Where's this USC Michigan game? I'm not seeing it on the. Made no sense. Why was in Columbus and practice Steelers jersey on? Hey, it happens sometimes. You don't ever just sometimes end up in Columbus for no reason. So there's 3 games back to back here that I think could also be interesting ones. Kansas is a good, talented football team, and I think if anyone's so they're going on the road to Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech still pulls it out, but I think that could be a closer game than people may realize. Georgia at Auburn. Auburn is just, they are so close to getting a big signature win like this. I could absolutely see Auburn winning the game over Georgia. Then Michigan on the road to USC. USC's offense is really high powered. I may actually go with the Trojans. I think Michigan's a good football team, but I think the Trojans may pull that one out and upset a top 15 team in Michigan. All right. So I'll be having a couple of videos coming out this week, obviously previewing the Oregon-Indiana game. If you guys want me to do more live streams like this during the week, just let me know. I have a lot of fun with this. I think I like interacting with you guys and being able to talk about, and you guys bring up a lot of really fun and interesting questions, and we have a lot of fun. So let me know if you want me to do more of these throughout the week. I'm thinking maybe like a 5 p.m. Pacific on like a Tuesday or a Thursday, something like that. And as always, please like and subscribe. My name is Zach with the Sports Corner at Choose Adventure Media, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.